Well, I thought we'd talk about Atlas shapers and Acorn shapers primarily, although there's a third one in there too that we'll just lightly touch on. First off, before I get started on that, I was going through Fleabay this morning. I see someone has listed a small Atlas shaper guard for, I think its starting bid is $60 and a buy it now of $147 or $149. While I would like you all to purchase my reproduction guards or whatever else I've got for you, for $149, that's a pretty good deal for an original shaper guard, and I don't expect it to last long, but maybe this ranting and raving about the high prices of Atlas stuff is having a little bit of effect anyway, so maybe we're making a little bit of a difference, because like I say, while I would rather you bought a reproduction guard, that's if I had my choice and I had to buy a shaper guard or was looking to buy a shaper guard, would I spend $20, $30, $40, whatever it is with shipping for one of my reproductions, or would I buy an original guard? I would probably buy the original guard. So somebody's going to get a reasonable deal there, I think, for what they're going for normally. The only other thing on that item is they've got a thing in the listing saying someone's told them that it also fits the Atlas tool post grinder. That is 100% incorrect. There's a world of difference between the guard that goes on the tool post grinder and the smaller guard for the Atlas. So if someone does need a tool post grinder guard, I have one here that my intent is to reproduce them eventually, and they are originally cast iron. For right now, if somebody needs one, I can cast one in aluminum. I haven't taken the time to do it because I haven't had the demand for it, but if someone needs one, why, give me a shout and we'll see what we can do. So that's pretty much the only thing with Fleabay that I think is worth talking about this morning. There's a few other things there, but I don't feel like delving into it. I have more important things to do. A friend of mine emailed me yesterday and pointed me at a YouTube channel called John's Workshop, Jon''S Workshop, 2 words. What it is it's a gentleman in the UK that has just picked up a Acorn 7-inch shaper, which is the equivalent to the Atlas shaper. And I thought we'd talk about it a little bit. Congratulations on that, for finding one. He apparently found it on eBay. I don't watch eBay UK at all. I may have to start a little bit just to see what's available, just for reference. But I think he's going to have a fine machine when he's all said and done, but I thought we'd talk about some of the differences. And I don't know a tremendous amount of them. I've not seen an Acorn shaper in person. I've seen several pictures. I've followed Acorn stuff off and on for years. One of the primary sources you're going to find for information on Acorn shapers and Acorn lathes is on Tony's Lathes UK, or what is it, Lathes UK? Yeah, lathes.co.uk, and they've got a big archive there, and they list a whole lot of machine tools, and they do have a listing for Acorn shapers. So that's primarily where you're going to find information. And I noticed a little bit of discrepancy there because I've looked at it in the past, and actually not too long ago, and some of the information that was there has either moved or been taken down, I think, or I might be full of crap and not know what I'm talking about, but I kind of watch that stuff a little bit. So anyway, I thought we'd talk about some of the differences. A lot of people say that Atlas had exported them and sold them in the UK under the Acorn name. I don't believe that's entirely true. My personal opinion is that Atlas built the machines, they sold them under Craftsman, and I believe they probably had a licensing agreement with I believe they originally probably had a licensing agreement with Halifax, who manufactured or who marketed the Acorn shapers and the lathes. They also built a 10-inch lathe that was very similar to the 10F lathe, and some of the parts are interchangeable, and there's been some references to parts being, replacement parts being Atlas listed parts or Atlas numbered parts, something to that. So it leads me to believe that there was probably a licensing agreement. Now, the castings themselves, and I think John said that the castings were virtually identical, and that is incorrect. And you can tell that just by looking at the pictures type of thing. Now, there was also a third shaper that was based off of the Atlas that was called the Astrolite, and that was sold in Australia, according to what Lathe UK says. So I'm looking at their website. I'd like to be showing pictures, but this is copyrighted material, so you can find all this information right there, but I'll tell you what I think I know, and we'll kind of reference pictures here a little bit so you'll know what's going on. The specifications are basically the same. Everything looks pretty good, but the castings, I believe, are completely different. And I'll reference back to John's video here too a little bit, and some of the things that I think are the same, some of the things that are different, and at least one change that I noticed within the Acorn machines themselves that I can remember over the years. The first thing I look at on pretty much any of these little Atlas machines is I look at the guards and the differences. The guards on these are different, then we'll get back into the main castings, but the guards on these are different. The large guard and the small guard too, they are basically the same as the Atlas guards, and I see John has a reference to both of his guards being made in aluminum. The larger guard was originally cast in cast iron, whereas I've only seen the smaller guards in aluminum, and I've only seen the larger guards in cast iron. Now, supposedly, several years ago, there was someone selling a smaller shaper guard for the Atlas and claimed it was cast iron. And I questioned that, and he said, no, it wasn't cast iron. So it's very possible that at some point Atlas at least prototyped those in cast iron, you know, whether they were an actual production model or not. But that's the only one that I'm aware of, and I've not seen that in my hot little hands. So that's for what it is. Anyway, the differences in the guards, the shapes are basically the same. What they did not do on any of the guards that I've seen for either the pictures or the actual one that John has is they do not have the raised rib on the center, or around the center cutout. They're all just a flat-faced guard. So they don't have that extra little raised area. Now, when you read some of the history from Lathe UK, why there's references to some of the parts and some of the guards for the lathes at least being made out of a plastic. So, you know, I have no way of checking that or anything, but I believe probably at some point they either used a cast plastic, a formed plastic, something maybe for the guards. They used them for some pulleys and things like that. But anyway, no real reference, but there's a difference in those belt guards there. Main casting wise, when I look at the main casting, why when you look at the switch areas, instead of having just the standard oval cutout or oval raised boss for the on-off switch, and this would be on all the Atlas castings that I've seen, you know, they had the optional or the square casting that I cast the reproduction for now too, that you could mount a regular switch box to, which I assumed was for three-phase, some sort of a three-phase application would be my guess. But anyway, all of the Atlas castings I've seen on the left-hand side have had that oval boss. When you look at the castings in the pictures and in John's video, that has a square casting. Now, it has a little bit of an oval raise on it on the bottom portion, but it appears to me to be lower down, and it looks like the raised boss for the switch is a rectangular boss primarily. So that to me is different. Let's see, did I see any other differences in the castings themselves? Yes, over the main bearing on the right-hand side or the left-hand side, on the smaller pulley guard side, why right above the large bearing boss, why Atlas has put a pressure oiler grease cap on there. It looks like the ones for both the Astrolite from Australia and the Acorn have a little bit of a square raised boss there. Yeah, it doesn't appear to me on his that there's any kind of a oil reservoir. It looks like the oiler is directly into the bearing cap, and there's a little bit of a triangular boss or a raised boss right above the boss for that main bearing, whereas Atlas greases through there. So a little bit of a difference there. But anyway, just the switch portion of it leads me to believe that they're completely different castings on the main casting. The oil tray itself, to me, on the Acorn, looks to be a little bit longer than on the Atlas. I could be mistaken there, but just on initial looking at it, why it looks to be a little bit different. The door on the side that covers the bull gear in the main casting, John says Acorn tool on it. And Halifax originally did them. They were tied in with sphere, and then they changed the name to Acorn Tool because they already had, I think they changed the name to Acorn Tool because they already had something else under that tool name. So they combined those. I have seen that shaper door. I've seen a picture of that shaper door that just said Acorn, very similar to Atlas does in the same style script and everything, whereas this one says Acorn Tool on it. But I've seen one that's, like I say, virtually the same as Atlas, except it says Acorn on it. So they evidently did at least a couple of different style doors there. On the shaper that was marketed to Australia, I did not see any markings at all on the door itself. On the Astolite that was marketed in Australia, it doesn't have any markings at all. The cross rail casting, when you look at the top of that cross rail casting on the ends where it feeds for the traverse and where it raises up and down, where it would raise vertically, the Acorn has more of a swooped cutout in it from going from vertical to horizontal, whereas the Atlas it still has a little radius in the corners, on each corner on the top there and probably on the bottom too, but it's more squared off. So those are a different casting. When I look at the mount that mounts on the back of the shaper, just comparing John's pictures to mine in the same way with the links for the crossfeed, the little bit that you can see, the numbers are not Atlas numbers. It doesn't look like, you know, it's hard to read them, but it looks like there's more numbers in there than there should be for it to be an Atlas number. So the bottom line is I believe all of these castings are different. I believe things like the crossfeed, for the automatic crossfeed, to me, John's looks exactly like the Atlas. So, and there's references on the lathe portion of this saying that the Zamac parts may very well have been imported from the US. John's looks like a later model crossfeed out of the Zamac, or the housing, and I would tend to believe that it is probably imported from the US, which that's part of the reason I believe that they were licensed through Atlas. You know, they had permission from Atlas to do them. So they probably brought in some of the smaller, harder to produce parts like the Zamac covers, maybe Zamac pulleys and that type of thing, possibly knobs and stuff. But the castings themselves, I think they were different. So it leads me to believe that the Acorn was a contracted or a licensed product from Atlas. Other than that, those are the main things that stand out to me. Our US factory handles would be the Martin or the Fairmont, and they would be a forging. It looks like the one that John has, and he says he believes it's original. It looks like it's more of a assembled part, you know, rather than a forging. Top castings, or the ram castings themselves, when you look at the Atlas, they have a kind of a retro look. When you look from front to back, they've got kind of a sweeping cutout type of thing, or a shadow line type of thing that kind of runs from front to back at an angle. An Art Deco look, I guess, is what I'm looking for. The Acorn doesn't have that. Now, when you look at the front part of the ram portion, on the Atlas are pretty well rounded as it goes into the base portion of it. Why, it's got a little bit of a radius there, but not very much. When you look at the Acorn on John's, it's more of a swooping from front to back. You know, and this is where our numbers are. It looks like the casting swoops from the front to the back and top to bottom type of thing in a fairly large thing, or a large curvature, I guess. When you look at the back that sets the column stroke, I believe, on the Acorn, it's on the top, but there's a little bit of a bump going down there. It's not a kind of as smooth going out there. And then the Astrolite doesn't have that at all, and it actually adjusts it from the back with a hand wheel on the back side. So differences there between the three of them. and that's about all I can see. I see there's mention on the lathes that they made the ways wider than what Atlas did. When I initially looked at the Acorn and started kind of investigating it, it almost looks like maybe the cross rail supports, the vertical ways on the main casting, like they might be slightly wider, but I can't tell that for sure. So anyway, those are just some of the differences that I notice, you know, and I think it's worth pointing out. There are some differences in them, but yeah, not the same machine at all. When you look at the Lathes UK site, there's a nice restoration of a US machine there. Right below it, there's several pictures of a green machine with kind of red primer in the back end of the ways and inside the table box and that type of thing. That, I believe, is a Astolite machine out of Australia, or from Australia, and that pretty much shows you the differences between on the ram itself. It's at the front of the ram, it looks more like the Atlas. It's more rounded right there where the angle indicators would be, and actually the rail looks more like an Atlas rail. But when you look at the back, it shows the ram length adjustment there with the knob on the back, and it's quite a bit different on the back of that ram. The doors I notice on both the, well, I can't tell for sure on the Astolite, but on the Acorn, the knob that holds the door on, you unscrew it and the door is allowed to come off. On the Atlas, it has the knob to put it on and pull it off, but there's normally just a spring mounted underneath that latches underneath the top of the main casting and locks it in place. There again, looks like the table drive ratchet mechanism looks like the later Atlas Zamac parts. Anyway, just thought you might find that interesting. Hope you've learned something. I'm learning something. Comments, suggestions, leave them in the comments section for me below. If you've got any information on the Acorn shapers, especially the Astolites, don't intrigue me that much, but the Acorns are kind of interesting. But comments, suggestions, leave them in the comments section for me below. And as always, thanks for taking the time to watch, guys.